It's a familiar scene. I'm going to read my way into it a bit, but not read the whole thing. It's a long passage because you can fill in the blanks. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. This is after they'd gone out and done their mission and then come back. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now, many saw them going and recognized them. And they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of Jesus and the disciples. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd. Now, so far, what's Jesus up to? He's trying to get away. He's trying to get a rest for him and especially for his disciples who have been going hard on this missionary trip to try their hands at field ed, right? But when the people rush them and when the people get sort of move toward them and crowd in again, Jesus' response is very interesting to me. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. If you're keeping a running tally of Jesus' qualities, compassion shows up here in a word. We've seen it in the healings, right? But as you go, you may be keeping a character of Jesus column. If so, throw that in. When it grew late, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat." But he answered them, "You give them something to eat." You give them something to eat. They said to him, "Are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread," a whole lot, "and give it to them to eat?" And he said to them, "How many loaves have you?" And you know the rest of the story, right? Jesus sees a crowd, 5,000 people plus, because that's just the men gathered, right? So there are families. He has a lot of people out there. He says, "Go ahead and feed them." And the disciples freak. "Are you kidding me? We don't have that kind of budget. We don't have that kind of time." And Jesus then says, what do we have? Right? Familiar story. It's a sacramental story. It's read at communion tables everywhere. And they, of course, feed everyone. There have been naturalists who have tried to say, well, there are a lot of people hiding their food, and once it was kind of peer pressure to do it, they brought their food out. It's presented, however, as a miracle, right? It's presented as a multiplication of the loaves and the fish. And so everybody eats, and there are leftovers, right? It is a stock miracle in the tradition of Jesus. In fact, it's one of the only ones that make it into all four Gospels. That's how widespread it was in the early church. People loved this story, as you and I probably love this story, right? So there it is, the feeding of the 5,000. And it's a glorious story. It shows Jesus' compassion. It shows his power. It shows a little bit the disciples not quite getting that this guy has game, right? Not quite getting that he can come through in this clutch. But it's a nice story. By the way, just a moment, I don't think I brought this up. Some of you have, I know, been tussling with the miracles. What do you do in a scientific age when a miracle shows up in the story, right? What do you do when Jesus calms a storm? Or what do you do when Jesus heals somebody or raises somebody from the dead? How can we think that happened? And some of us have no trouble. There's not even a speed bump at it. Others of us have a real trouble even fathoming that we could ever bring that across the ages, right? The scholar Austin Farrer, who was a Mark scholar and a chaplain at Oxford, a friend of C.S. Lewis in the middle part of the last century, was once asked about his intricate reading of Mark's miracles and their symbolism and everything. He was once asked, do you think Jesus really did those miracles? How can you ever believe that? Because this is Oxford in the 40s and 50s and 60s, right? And Farrer answered, "I don't know. But I do know that God is the only one who could ever write with history. That's been the best answer I've heard about how miracles go. We don't know if they happened. And some of our worldviews close them out and say they couldn't have, and others welcome them, and others of us sit in that middle and say maybe they're symbolic, maybe they're not. What Farrer is saying is God could do it. Whether God did it or not, I can't verify, right? So as you process miracles, it's not a bad idea to develop your own sense of how you're going to do them, because they just keep showing up if you're doing Gospels, if you're doing Acts, right? So with that in mind, we're just going to take the story of the feeding of 5,000 sort of for granted, just for the sake of our reading tonight, because his audience in Rome probably did, right? After the feeding of the 5,000, we get several other episodes. We get the walking on water. We get the healing of several people, a lot of people. We get Jesus challenging the purity laws as they're being enforced by the Pharisees. We get the Syrophoenician or Canaanite woman's faith when Jesus initially resists, and then I bet some of you have questions about that. Put them in the chat. And then he finally relents and helps her, right? He cures a deaf man. But then in the beginning of chapter 8, we get this strange second thing. In chapter 6, Jesus fed 5,000 people, plus, with a few loaves and fishes. Doesn't that kind of settle it for how he does with food? But, and I've told you before, that in chapter 8, when it shows up, when we see a second miracle, and Mark doesn't seem to say, well, as you know, as we know Jesus could feed a lot of people, he then gathered 4,000 people. Scholars throughout the really the last century and a half have often said, you know, Mark is so clumsy, he can't remember that he told that story already. He can't remember that 2 chapters ago, less than 2 chapters ago, he went on and on about those 5,000 people, and now he somehow, did he just throw this in because he had an extra copy? Did he think this was a different thing, right? This is the group who say that Mark put pearls on a string, so they worry that he might have added a duplicate pearl. Right? But you and I know Mark to be a pretty subtle crafter of narrative. We've been tracking that as we've gone. It's one of our goals, right? To see how this narrator hints at things and puts things intentionally in place. We found him doing that with the crowds in 1 to 3. We found him doing that with the ordering of things in chapters 4 and 5. And now here, it's hard for us to believe that this subtle narrator suddenly got stupid and forgot that he put 5,000 in and accidentally put a duplicate in. So you and I, giving Mark the benefit of the doubt, want to have another solution than just his daftness, his inattention. I want to look at how the disciples respond in chapter 8 and see if we might be able to make something out of that. So I'm going to read a bit from the way it goes in chapter 8. In those days, there was again a great crowd without anything to eat. He called his disciples and said to them, I have compassion for the crowd because they've been with me now for 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they'll faint away, and some of them have come from a great distance. His disciples replied, how can one feed these people with bread here in the desert? He asked them, how many loaves do you have? They said, 7. And he ordered the crowd to sit down on the ground. He took the 7 loaves, and after giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to distribute. And you know the rest. 4,000 men plus eat and have plenty, right? I want you to notice the disciples' response. 4,000 people, they don't have any food. Jesus says we ought to feed them, and what's their response? Hey, let's do it like last time. Let's just put the loaves out, and you go ahead and do your Shazam thing, and we'll be fine. Is that what they say? No. They say, how in the world are we going to ever feed them, right? These disciples who have come off with, I think, A- to B- grades early, suddenly look pretty dumb.